Okay, we're excited to hit on a topic today that I think is a pain point for a lot of marketing leaders. A lot of people that are at the helm of marketing in some capacity and probably are tweaking the dials maybe on their own paid media, paid advertising efforts. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm excited about it. Actually, we're here with Bethany, our VP of Growth, and Zach, our VP of Media. So let's dive in.
Okay, Zach, this is what you live and breathe, paid advertising, paid media. And I'd love to know, what are some common misconceptions that you see when it comes to this particular area of paid media that make you want to throw your computer against the wall?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the most common misperception that I see is that marketing's a straight line. Basically, what I mean by that is we'll have companies come to us for, say, awareness, but what they really need is scale and growth. So there's this misconception that if they have a great brand campaign and they put it out there, that people will see the ad and buy the product. But that's really not how customer behavior works anymore. I think it used to be more that way, especially when, broad-based television was the main media channel and a lot of the spend went there. But as things have shifted more and more towards digital and understanding customer journeys, that's really not the best way to move forward. You might still be able to put together a channel-specific campaign like a social campaign or YouTube or Google or whatever it is, and you might be able to see an initial uplift in sales or acquisition, but eventually you're going to stall out because you're only looking at this from the upper funnel or an awareness-based channel. You've seen that initial growth, but then you don't have the rest of the customer journey considered. And so whenever someone comes to us and they ask specifically for awareness, my first thought is, yes, they do need awareness, but they probably don't have a great understanding of the nuances of a paid advertising plan, and that it does require some additional follow-ups and understanding that customer journey.
Okay.
So we work with clients across consumer packaged goods, healthcare, education, government services, you name it. What's the number one thing that every brand you're working with or that we talk to has in common?
Well, I think it's that they all need more customers. They all need more acquisition. They're at a point where maybe they're stalled or they're seeing diminishing return or just, things have gotten flat. How do we scale up? How do we grow more? Especially if they had some early success and then they see it kind of stall out or even decline.
So there's a plateau happening.
Yeah, I think so. There's the plateau happening.
And that's common. That's not just unique to a specific industry or B2B or B2C, right?
I think B2C or B2B, it's harder to find your customers at scale. I mean, that's definitely a trickier advertising plan to put together. B2C is a little bit broader. So when, B2B, definitely you're going to see those are very niche audiences and reaching them at scale can be a challenge.
And we talked about that inflection point, usually in the pain point, if you will, that our clients, challenger brands, and specifically, usually we're talking to CMOs. We talked about what that inflection point is, but what are some of the specific questions that they're asking themselves and that they come to you asking?
Yeah, I think, you see a lot of it, how do we drive awareness? How do we drive growth? How do we drive customer acquisition? How do we lower our cost per acquisition? How do we get a higher return on ad spend? I think are probably the most common questions that we get. It really depends on their KPI, what industry they're in. We even have some clients that if they can get a couple of leads through, they'll see a return on their ad spend, and others where they need a acquisition cost of X or under in order to see return on their investment.
So when you look under the hood of a new client that's come with these presenting questions and this inflection point, what are some of the common patterns that you notice right away? And what are some initial things you do to just get them unstuck and on their way making some progress towards that goal?
Yeah, usually I look at, what they're doing and are they getting enough audience scale? A lot of times now, especially with digital, you can be extremely targeted with your audience, which is a good thing, but you can also get so targeted that you eliminate an ability to grow because you're getting your audience so niche that it's not big enough in order for you to scale. So the first thing that I look at is how can we reach that audience, that niche audience, but how can we reach them at scale? Because in order to grow, you need to be targeted, but you also have to have enough people that you're getting in front of that you can convert and acquire and ultimately grow. So that would be the first thing is, what are you doing now? What's your audience look like? What's your reach levels right now? And then go back and look at some other potential channels or maybe some things we could turn the dials on to try and scale up that audience and get your growth back on track.
Okay.
So much of what makes the campaign successful is medium and message and making sure that they're married together in the right way. So in your opinion, what are the essential elements to make sure you have success there when you're thinking about creative and media?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have a synergy between creative and media. My first job was at a media-only agency. We'd plan the media, we'd send the specs, and then we'd get creative back. But there was very little conversation about, from a media strategy perspective, this is what we're trying to do. And one of the things I think about us that make us unique is when we have those conversations. I actually had a conversation with our account team this morning where, here's the first touch point. This is what we're trying to accomplish with this first touch point. This is the action that's going to trigger this next ad. And so this is where we want to push from maybe a broad-based message, like this is who we are, into more of a product-based message with like a call to action to get them to do something. And then this is the next ad that they're going to see. And that's going to be a stronger call to action. And at this point, we're trying to actually get them to convert. And I think that gives the creative team a lot better idea of the customer journey and how the media is going to work and how that creative plays into it. Because if it's separate, sometimes the creative team will do a really great job, but it may not be meeting the customer where they are. In terms of what we're trying to do from a media strategy perspective.
Yeah, and we see that we do have clients where we don't handle the media. We might only be handling like strategy or creative. In bridging that gap, there's always a bit of like a disconnect that you have to overcome.
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like when we were talking this morning, it's like, this is the last ad. What is the strongest thing that we can say to convert them here? We've already told them this, and now's the final push that we're going to need to do to get them to convert.
If you're in the seat of a marketer, how do you know when you need help? You present to yourself and you're not able to ask. That's a good indicator.
Well, the first thing is, are you still seeing the sales growth? Are your sales going up? If they're not going up, if they're stalled or they're going down, that's obviously a red flag. If you're looking at it on a digital media metrics basis, which, really you shouldn't. You should look at it basically on the KPI that matters most, which I would assume would be sales. But maybe you're seeing some of those metrics start to show a decline. You're seeing a diminishing return. And that could mean that you're just simply oversaturating. You have too small of an audience. You're overreaching them, and they're just kind of starting to tune you out. Now, how do you fix that? You kind of have to get under the hood. But I think those would be the questions I would ask is, what are you seeing from a sales growth perspective? Are they starting to go down? Are they staying flat? If they're staying flat, you probably tapped out the market. If they're going down, you're probably oversaturating the market. And then what do you need to do to fix that?
Talk a little bit about how marketing can fuel sales. And I know it's kind of like a very basic question, but specifically, they can be siloed at times, marketing department, sales department. Where do you see it work and how does it best work?
The paid advertising should be a supplement to the salespeople. We're not trying to take anything away from them. We're just trying to produce warmer leads if it's on the B2B side. So any information that they can pass back to us is going to be valuable. Are we getting you leads that are quality, or are we getting you leads that aren't quality, so that we can turn the dials on our side? On the digital side, you get a lot of data, but you don't necessarily get that one-to-one that you would get on the sales side. Any feedback that you can give to us can allow us to say, okay, we are driving the right growth here. Or if it's like, even we have some clients that sell in store, right? And we're trying to drive in-store growth. We have some acquisition that we can do with some stores, but sometimes you're a little bit blinded and you're kind of relying on the digital metrics to determine whether or not the campaign's being successful. But if it's an in-store purchase and you don't have that attribution to it, you absolutely need to know from the sales team, this is working or it isn't, so that you can make some adjustments to maybe we need more reach, maybe we need to up the frequency, but tell us one way or the other so that we can turn the dials.
Data is a buzzword. Everywhere you look, you see that. And it's often cloaked in, it's just a lot of information that actually has no real action or insight that you can take from it. So how do you navigate that? How do you make sure that data is not a buzzword in your context and in your work with our clients?
Yeah, I think the way we look at it is the data is sort of the what. Okay. And then I think we're really good at reading numbers, taking numbers, telling a story, and developing an action plan. So we get the data, that's the what. And then what we want to come back with is the so what. So we have your data, now what? What does that mean for you exactly? And then from there, the what now, which is how we take that data and turn it into an actionable plan to help you achieve the scale that you want to achieve.
We often talk about the door number 3 effect, which is the kind of the before and the after of when we've entered into a brand and their story. It's usually a pain point of some kind, a moment, maybe not a crisis, you could say, but results aren't looking like they want them to. And so they're seeking outside help from an agency like ours. And I'd love to know a couple stories of brands that capture that before and the after in their success story and in our partnership, where we got to have a very obvious impact in their success. What comes to mind?
We have a CPG brand called Malk that's a plant-based milk, very clean, 3 simple ingredients, a little bit higher price point, going up against the Oatly's, the Silks, some of the other plant-based milks in the market. They came to us wanting to drive growth in Whole Foods while tracking awareness. This was a couple of years ago. And one of the campaigns that I'm most proud of, because going back to the question you asked earlier, we were a little bit blind to the sales data during this. We were sort of really, and the client was great about providing that feedback during the campaign, but we were able to figure out a way to reach Whole Foods specific buyers of those competitive plant-based milks, which was a very scalable audience across all the Whole Foods locations. And we did a video campaign, and then we had some additional campaigns underneath that. So very halo campaign from a brand perspective, and then some additional follow-up creatives to help push people through to sale. And I believe we saw 27% growth for that first initial wave of the campaign. And we do have to give the client a lot of credit for passing that information back so that we can make adjustments on our side. If we hadn't had that, I still think we would have had a good bit of success, but having that partnership really helped. And we continue to see growth. And then we were able to get attribution. So we were eventually able to show the number of bottles we sold within Whole Foods. And then they branched out to some of the other retailers that they use, like the Krogers of the world and Publix grocery stores. And now we have that attribution too. But at the time we didn't. So we were having these calls. They were passing information back to us. Here's the growth we're seeing. In some of the markets, it wasn't as good as some others. So we were able to turn the dials and ultimately get to those goals that they wanted to hit.
Any other stories come to mind?
A more recent campaign is our TXT campaign, which just launched in May. I think we saw over 100,000 conversions in the first month, which was really great. That one, we have a tremendous amount of insights on the data side of things, and the client's really great about giving us that access. So it's all digital. So we don't have that blind spot that we have with the CPG brand. But it's always good to see good results from the client. It's always good to have that, that working relationship. So the TXT campaign went really well too. It's a bit more integrated than Mock. We have more channels in market. We have some search, we have social, we have connected television, audio. There's way more channels in that one. And it's a much broader audience. And that sometimes can be challenging when the audience is too broad. It's like you can really go through the dollar super fast, but that campaign's performing really, really well too.
Incredible. So when your results plateau, and if you're watching this show, you might be thinking, that's me. If you need an extra set of eyes and a team to just look under the hood with you and for you, we do an audit of each channel, whichever channel is feeling like it's the most stuck or you want the most support on. So we'd love to help. And tell me, if you would, what that audit process looks like and the value that even if brand came to us and said, can you just do the audit and get us unstuck and on our way and let us action the recommendations you've given? Yeah,
that would look like, well, the first thing we want to do is, what are you doing? What are the results you're seeing? Getting a look at your Google Analytics, if that's okay. And then the next thing we would do is probably look at scalable, like what your audience is, what are some scalable channels? Have you tapped out in certain channels? Do you need to consider adjusting your audience? Maybe you even need to adjust the way you're bidding in a digital space. Like if you're a CPA bidder versus a ROAS bidder, maybe you're doing it on a click basis. There's a bunch of different things that you could do. We'll take a look at all of it and come back with a recommendation and probably an action plan that, if you wanted to work with us, this is what we would do.
Love that. Perfect. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Thank
Zach.
you. Thanks for having me.
Bethany.